Hello and welcome to Energy Insights. Today, our description is regarding the China's coal power, which falls below 50% for the consumption of its electricity. What it means for the global energy. For decades, coal has been the center of China's electricity system, but that's beginning to change. For the first time, coal and other thermal power generated less than half of China's electric power. During the first half of 2026, thermal power accounted for 49.7% of the total electricity generation. This is a major milestone because China is the world's largest electricity producer and the world's largest coal consumer. But the headline figure needs some context. A decline in coal's share does not necessarily mean that China is suddenly using much less coal. The more important story is that other sources of electricity, particularly renewable, are expanding much faster. Thus, renewable are changing the power mix of China. The biggest driver behind the change is the rapid expansion of renewable energy. During the first half of 2026, renewable resources accounted for around 41.2% of the China's electricity generation, while wind and solar alone accounted for 24.6%. China has built an enormous amount of solar and wind capacity and continues to invest heavily in the hydropower, nuclear power, and battery storage and transmission infrastructure. As a result, renewable electricity is increasing, meeting China's growing electricity demand. This is important because China's electricity consumption continues to rise. If renewable generation grows faster than total electricity demand, coal shares can fall even if coal-fired generation remains substantial. So the question is that coal is still very important for China. China has not abandoned coal. In fact, thermal power generation increased by around 2.9% during the first half of 2026 compared with the same period last year. This illustrates an important point. Coal's share can decline even while the coal generation increases. China's overall electricity system is expanding and renewable generation is growing at an even faster pace. Coal also continues to provide an important source of reliability. Solar power does not generate electricity at night. Wind output changes with the weather conditions, and electricity demand can rise sharply during periods of extreme temperatures. For this reason, coal plants may increasingly move from the beginning the main source of electricity to provide electric power to the system. And it can provide the backup and flexibility to a system which is dominated by the renewable energy. What about China's coal imports? China's coal import remain enormous. In July 2026, the country imported approximately 43.7 million tons of coal, which is about 23% more than a year earlier. At a first glance, this appears inconsistent with China's energy transition. However, short-term coal imports are affected by several factors, including domestic production, prices, weather, and temporary supply of disruption. Recent increases were also linked to disruption in domestic coal production following mine safety inspections. Therefore, 1 month of strong coal imports does not necessarily indicate a reversal of the China's longer-term energy transition. The more important indicators are the long-term trends in coal generation, coal plant utilization, and renewable electricity production. What does this mean for LNG? China's changing electricity mix also has important implications for the global LNG market. It may be tempting to assume that every unit of the coal generation that disappears will be replaced by natural gas, but China's transition is more complicated. China has several alternatives: solar, wind, hydropower, and nuclear power, battery storage, and expanded transmission networks. These technologies can increasingly compete with both coal and gas. Natural gas can still play an important role, particularly a flexible generation supporting intermittent renewable energy. However, China's rapid renewable expansion means LNG may not capture all of the electricity demand released by declining coal generation. For LNG supplies. China future gas demand will therefore depend on much more than the coal to gas switching. And what's the implications for the global coal markets? China's changing power mix also matters for international coal markets. China is one of the largest coal consumers and importers. To a sustained decline in coal demand could eventually affect major exporting countries like Indonesia, Australia, Mongolia, and Russia. However, the transition is unlikely to happen in a strategic or in a straight line. Coal imports may increase temporarily because strong electricity demand, domestic production problems, or changes in the international prices. The key question is therefore not whether Chinese coal imports rise or fall in a particular month. The key question is whether coal-fired generation and coal plant utilization decline structurally over time. The bigger picture is that what is happening in China is much bigger than a change in one percentage figure. China is effectively rebuilding its electricity system. It is simultaneously expanding solar, wind, hydropower, nuclear power, battery storage, transmission infrastructure while maintaining a very large coal fleet. This means China energy transition is not simply a story of coal versus renewable. It is increasingly about how different technologies work together to provide electricity reliability and flexibility. Three numbers capture the significance of this transformation. That 49.7% of the share of coal of the China's electricity generated from thermal power during the first half of 2026. 41.2% of the share generated is from renewable energy, and 24% of the combined share of wind and solar generation part is in the China's energy mix. These figures show that China has not abandoned coal, but coal is no longer the overwhelming source of electricity in China that it once was. So what happens next? The 49.7% figure should therefore be viewed as a milestone, not the end of coal. The real question is how quickly China's electricity system continues to change. If renewable generation, storage, and the transmission expand rapidly, coal could gradually move from being the dominant source of electricity to becoming a supportive source of reliability and flexibility. That could have major consequences for the global coal markets, LNG demand, energy investment, and wider energy transition. China energy story is therefore entering a new phase. The question is no longer simply whether China will use coal. The question is how quickly coal will move from the center of China's power system towards the margins. This is Energy Insights, and we conclude our today's episode regarding the China energy system. For more analysis on the global energy markets, LNG, oil, gas, electricity, energy transition, please subscribe to Energy Insights, and we will see you in the very next episode. Thank you for watching Energy Insights.